The night was quiet, but the forest was not. Every tree seemed to breathe. Every shadow seemed to move. The red moon above was cracked like a broken glass eye, watching everything below. And in the middle of that silent alien forest stood a tired human named Rylan. He was out of breath, his legs shook. His arms were covered with old scars and fresh cuts. But even with all that pain, he did not look afraid. He stood tall, calm, almost ready. Behind him, something heavy stepped on dry leaves. Rylan did not need to turn around. He already knew who it was. He had heard those steps for 15 long years. In deserts, jungles, frozen lands, dead ruins, and burning cities, those steps never stopped chasing him. They belonged to her, the Huntress. She was a legend among her people. The Valkyrie, a creature built for tracking, built for killing. Tall, strong, with silver armor that shone even in the dark. Her senses could pick up heat, sound, smell, everything. Once she marked a target, that target did not live long, except Rylan. For 15 years, she hunted him. For 15 years he ran. Every time she got close, he escaped. Every time she thought he was dead, he survived. And every time she returned, she came back more angry, more focused, more hungry for the kill. Tonight she finally reached him. Rylan closed his eyes for a moment and whispered, "Right on time." He took one step forward and entered a circle of ancient stone pillars. They looked old, older than any alien empire. Each one was covered with strange symbols glowing faint blue. The ground inside the circle felt colder, almost like something watched from under the earth. 9 flat stones lay on the dirt, spaced in a perfect arc. Each one looked like a grave marker. Rylan walked to the center of the circle. Behind him, the Huntress entered the clearing. Her armor hummed. Her eyes burned with anger. Her voice was sharp like metal scraping. "Human," she growled, "your run ends here." Rylan did not turn. He only looked at the 9 stones. "Yes," he said softly, "it ends here." The Huntress stepped closer. Her long spear pointed at his back. "You tired me for 15 years. I crossed 13 systems because of you. You stole my honor. You made me look weak. Tonight I take your life." Rylan finally turned to face her. Even injured and weak, he stood in a way that made her hesitate. He was not afraid. Not even a little. He pointed at the 9 stone markers behind him and said, "You're on time. 9 lie here. Yours is next." The Huntress frowned. For the first time, she did not understand. "9?" she said. Rylan nodded slowly. "9 people you killed. 9 lives taken by your hands. They were my team, my friends, my family in the stars." The forest wind picked up. The pillars glowed brighter. "And tonight," Rylan continued, "this place will judge number 10. The Huntress laughed cold and loud. "Judge me? This planet is dead. Nothing lives here," Rylan smiled. But it was a sad smile. "That's what you think." A deep, low rumble moved under the earth. The symbols on the pillars flickered like waking eyes. A faint whispering sound rose between the stones, like ancient voices starting to speak again after thousands of years. The Huntress looked around. Suddenly alert, Rylan stared straight at her. "I didn't come here to escape," he said. "I came here to end it." The ground shook. The 9 stones lit up like fire. The forest went silent. The Huntress tightened her grip on her spear, and Rylan whispered one last time, "Welcome to the final run." Asterisk. The past always hides in quiet places of the mind, waiting for the right moment to return. As the ground of the alien world trembled under Rylan's feet, an old memory rose like smoke. It carried him back 15 years, to the day everything changed, the day the Huntress first saw him, and the day he lost the 9 people he loved most. At that time, Rylan was not a runner. He was not a survivor, not a fighter, not a ghost the galaxy whispered about. He was simply a young engineer on the human colony world, Orion 5. Life there was peaceful. Too peaceful, maybe. People grew vegetables under clean blue skies. Children played near solar fences. Nights were full of soft lights and warm laughter. No one thought of danger. No one believed in war. Rylan worked in the engine bay of the colony station. He was good with machines, better with numbers, and terrible with jokes, but the 9 people on his team enjoyed laughing at his attempts anyway. They were more than co-workers. They were like a found family. There was Dre, the big man with a gentle voice. Lissa, the medic who always hummed old songs. Harper, who could fix anything but her own hair. And the others bright, kind, full of life. Rylan looked up to them. They felt like home. He thought that home would last forever. Then came the morning sky that broke Dot at first. It looked like a shooting star, just a small streak of fire across the clouds. Children pointed and cheered. People smiled. But the streak kept growing. It became louder, brighter, closer. And then they saw the shape. A black spear-shaped ship tore through the clouds, leaving flames behind. An alarm screamed across the colony. People ran. Rylan froze for 2 long seconds, just enough to see the doors of the ship open. Valkyrie soldiers dropped from the sky like shadows made of metal. Their armor shone silver. Their eyes glowed with cold hunger. They moved without sound, without mercy. But one warrior stepped ahead of all the others. Tall, armored in silver and violet. Eyes sharp like a predator that knew exactly where its prey stood. The Huntress. Even before she spoke, even before she raised her weapon, everyone could feel something different about her. She carried herself with pride, with certainty, with the cruel joy of someone who believed hunting was holy work. The 9 members of Rylan's team rushed to gather civilians and lead them to the shelters. Rylan grabbed a young child and ran with the group. But the Huntress saw movement, their movement. She lifted her spear, and in a blur of silver and fire, she was among them. The colony became a storm of screams. Rylan remembered every moment too clearly. Dre trying to shield 2 children with his own body. Lissa pulling wounded people behind a wall. Harper throwing a piece of pipe at the Huntress, even though she had no chance of hurting her. One by one, the 9 stood their ground. One by one, the Huntress cut them down, not fast, not gently. She moved with strange grace, like she was dancing. Like every kill was art to her. Rylan was pushed away by Lissa before she fell. He ran with the last group of survivors, tears blurring his vision. He wanted to go back. He wanted to help them. But he knew if he returned, every life they tried to protect would be wasted. The Huntress turned and saw him. Their eyes met across the smoke. She pointed her spear at him, marking him. One word left her mouth. 10th. From that moment, she began the hunt. From that moment, Rylan's old life ended, and a 15-year chase across the stars began. Ending now. In the circle of ancient stones. Time does strange things to a person, especially when every sunrise might be the last. For Rylan, the 15 years after the attack on Orion 5 felt like 15 different lives lived by one tired soul. But there was one thing that never changed. The Huntress was always behind him. The galaxy was huge, filled with countless stars, strange planets, and worlds older than human history. But no matter where Rylan ran, her shadow stretched over him like a long, sharp blade. Some nights, he could almost hear her breathing. Some days, he woke up with the feeling that she was standing right behind him. Fear could have broken him. But it didn't. Fear shaped him. The quiet engineer who once fixed machines now learned to fix himself. The man who once lived in peace now learned to live in the spaces between life and death. He became something the galaxy did not expect, a human who refused to stay dead, refused to quit, refused to be the 10th mark of a Valkyrie Huntress. His journey across the stars was not a straight line. It twisted through danger, loss, and strange discoveries. On Vernox 3, he lived among miners and worked the deep tunnels, learning how to navigate pitch-dark spaces where even light gave up. When the Huntress trapped him there, he escaped through a vent barely wider than his shoulders. She was too large to follow, and her roar echoed for hours. On the icy moon of Kelisar, Rylan learned to track creatures that moved under the frozen ground. Their footsteps were almost silent, but he learned to feel the vibrations through his boots. That skill saved his life when the Huntress tried to ambush him in a whiteout storm. She missed by inches. On Thelene Station, he traded scrap parts for food and slept in abandoned cargo pods. He met smugglers, traders, and even a few Valkyrie rebels who spoke of the Huntress with fear. They said she hunted not for orders, but for pride. She chased those who escaped her blade longer than any other warrior of her kind. She was relentless, patient, and hungry for the 10th kill. Rylan listened, learned, and kept moving. People began to whisper about a human who survived impossible situations. A human who outran a Valkyrie Huntress. A human who the universe simply could not kill. They called him Ghost Rudder. But Rylan did not feel like a ghost. He felt like a man trying to hold on to the last piece of his old life. The promise he made to the 9 people who fell before him, he would not be next. Along the way, he discovered something else, something unexpected. The Huntress was fast, but she was not perfect. Every chase revealed a weakness. Every near capture exposed a small mistake. She grew angrier each time he escaped. Anger clouded her judgment. Pride made her careless. Rylan began to understand her patterns, her breathing, her movement, her rhythm. He started not just to run, but to plan. There was an old legend told by travelers about a dead world where ancient beings once judged warriors for their bloodlust. A place called Kretus, a planet avoided even by pirates. Most believed the story was a myth, but Rylan never ignored myths. Sometimes myths hid truths sharper than knives. He followed old star maps, decoded lost signals, survived raids, storms, and traps. Each time he survived the Huntress, he moved one step closer to Kretus. Little by little, he stopped being prey and became something the Huntress had never faced. A human who chose the battleground. A human who studied his enemy. A human who refused to die. And when he finally found the ancient world, he knew the final run was coming. The Huntress would follow. She always did. Asterisk. The universe had many dark corners, but none as quiet or feared as the lost world called Kretus. Travelers whispered its name only in low voices, as if the planet could hear from across the stars. Many maps deleted it. Some showed it only as a red X, as if warning, do not look here. Do not go here. But Rylan went. He had been following a trail of clues for years. Broken star charts, old alien carvings, strange warnings left on forgotten space stations. All pointed to one truth. Kretus was not dead. Kretus was waiting. His ship entered orbit over the planet with a soft shake. Through the window, Rylan saw a world covered in ash-gray land and black forests, with rivers like silver veins cutting through the dark. The sky swirled with green clouds. The whole planet felt ancient, like it had been alive longer than any species in the galaxy. When Rylan stepped onto the surface, the air felt heavy, as if the world carried a long, sad memory. His boots sank slightly into the dark soil. Even the wind sounded old, whispering through twisted trees like a voice too tired to speak clearly. He walked for hours, guided by the broken map he carried. Storms growled far away. Strange creatures moved in the shadows but never came close. It was almost as if they feared him or feared where he was going. At last, he found it, a valley shaped like a giant scar on the planet's surface. And in the center of that valley stood a formation of towering stone pillars, arranged in a perfect circle. Their surfaces were covered in glowing symbols, older than any language Rylan had ever seen. They hummed softly, like a heartbeat. This was the place of judgment, the ancient site spoken of in myths. Ryland stepped into the circle. His heart pounded, but he wasn't afraid. He felt something else, something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Inside the circle were 9 flat stone markers, each the size of a grave. He knelt beside the first one. Cold, smooth, silent. He whispered, "For Dre." He touched the next. "Lissa." One by one, he named the 9 who died on Orion 5. It felt like laying ghosts to rest. But the 10th space, an empty patch of earth waited. Like an open mouth, Raylan pulled out a small metal device. A scanner the rebels on Thelene Station had given him. He switched it on and pointed it at the symbols on the pillars. The device shook and flickered. A robotic voice said, "Warning, unknown energy source detected. Origin, extremely ancient." Raylan felt the ground vibrate beneath his knees. This place was not ruins. This place was alive. He studied the old carvings on the nearest pillar. He had learned pieces of different languages during his years of running, and some symbols made sense. Enough to see the truth behind the myth. This circle did not kill the innocent. It only judged the violent. The ones who hunted for sport. The ones who took lives with pride. And if their hearts were full of bloodlust. The ground beneath him trembled harder. The circle would end them. Ryland stepped inside the exact center. The symbols brightened, then dimmed. Nothing attacked him. Nothing trapped him. The air remained still. He let out a slow breath. "Good," he whispered. "Then the legends are true." He wasn't afraid for himself. This place wasn't meant for him. It was meant for someone like the Huntress, someone who chased life only to take it, someone who turned death into a trophy. Raylan stood up and looked at the sky, knowing she was out there, still tracking him. She always found him. She always followed. And when she arrived here, when she entered this circle, the planet would judge her. He whispered to the wind, "Come find me." The green clouds above rolled like angry waves. The final trap was set. Asterisk. The wind on Kretus moved like a cold hand across the valley. The stone pillars glowed with a low, steady light, as if waiting for something or someone to step inside their ancient circle. Ryland stood in the center, calm and silent. The 9 empty grave markers around him like quiet witnesses. He knew she would come. He knew she could not resist. For 15 years, the Huntress had followed his trail, crossing star systems, oceans, and deserts. She chased him through burning ruins and frozen storms. She survived ship crashes, deadly beasts, and even her own people turning against her. Nothing stopped her. She lived for the hunt. So when Ryland lit a fire on this dead world, when he stopped running and offered himself as bait, she followed like a shadow pulled by instinct. And finally, she arrived. The ground trembled first, just a soft shake, enough for a few stones to roll down a distant hill. Then came the sound, a high, sharp hum, like metal cutting the air in long sweeps. A silver shape appeared in the dark sky, flying low between the torn clouds. Her ship, sleek, fast, built for war. It landed with a heavy thud outside the valley. Dust climbed into the air like smoke. The ship's ramp lowered slowly, and a tall figure stepped into the open. The Huntress. Silver armor wrapped her body. 2 long blades hung across her back. Her helmet split apart and folded behind her head, revealing her sharp features and eyes that glowed faint violet. The wind touched her armor, making it hum softly. She smelled the air, sensed the energy from the pillars, and smiled, not a warm smile, a hunter's smile. Her voice cut through the valley like a blade. "Human, you stand in my sight." Ryland did not step back. Instead, he placed one hand on a stone marker beside him, tracing the carved edge. "You found me," he said calmly. She tilted her head. "You chose not to, because this..." The sound echoed along the valley walls. "For you, yes. For me, no." She lifted her spear, letting the tip shine. You survived longer than any prey. You should feel honored. Your death will be remembered. Rylan pointed at the 9 markers arranged around the circle. These 9 are already remembered, he said. You sent them here, one by one. The Huntress's smile faded. Her eyes narrowed into thin lines. She knew those 9 belonged to his team on Orion 5. To her, they were trophies. To him, they were ghosts he had carried across the galaxy. You mourn them still? She asked. Weak. Raylan shook his head. No, I honor them. There's a difference. She stepped forward, entering the outer edge of the circle. The pillars flashed once softly, like a warning. The ground beneath her boots, vibrat. Her eyes shifted briefly, unsure. Rylan saw the confusion. You feel it, don't you? He said quietly. This place is older than your people, older than your empire. It watches everything that The Huntress ignored the strange feeling and marched deeper. Her pride would not let her stop. She walked with hard steps, her spear pointed. I think they will judge you. The Huntress froze for half a second, just long enough for doubt to flicker across her face. Judge me. She laughed again. I am Valkyrie. I am born for war. Blood is my path. It is honor. Raylan stepped back exactly 1 pace, letting her advance. Then let the planet decide, he said softly. Not you, not me. The pillars brightened as she crossed the center line of the circle. Energy flowed between them like invisible lightning. The ground shook harder. The Huntress turned sharply, eyes glowing brighter. What have you brought me into, human? Raylan met her. Gaze without fear. The end of the hunt, he said, and the circle began to wake. The air inside the stone circle changed the moment the Huntress stepped fully into it. The wind died. The clouds above stopped moving. Even the strange forest around the valley seemed to hold its breath. It was as if the whole planet had paused to watch what would happen next. The glowing symbols on the pillars brightened, turning from soft blue to sharp white. Each pillar hummed with a deeper and deeper sound, like a giant waking from a long sleep. The Huntress felt the vibration through her boots. For the first time in years, she hesitated. What is this? She growled, tightening her grip on her spear. Rylan did not answer. He stood at the center of the circle, surrounded by the 9 stone markers. His eyes were calm, almost sad. He looked at her as if he already knew how the story would end. The ground surged with light. A beam shot upward from each marker, 9 columns of pale fire rising into the sky. The Huntress jumped back on instinct. Her spear clashed against one of the glowing streams, and sparks exploded off the metal. She glared at Rylan. You use tricks? Ancient toys? Raylan shook his head. Not toys, not tricks. He looked around at the circle. This place existed before your people learned to hunt, before humans learned to speak. It was built for one purpose. The pillars groaned like a huge creature stretching its limbs, to judge the ones who take joy in killing. The Huntress snarled. Judgment is for the weak. The symbols on the pillars reacted to her words, flickering violently. Rylan stepped back, moving out of the direct center. You feel it, don't you? The circle reads your heart. The Huntress took 1 step forward, but the air pushed against her, soft but heavy, like walking into deep water. She bared her teeth. I am Valkyrie, she shouted. I fear nothing. The circle responded. Light poured from the 9 markers and swirled around her, forming a ring of pale flame. The fire didn't burn her skin, but it pressed against her armor, making it groan under the pressure. The voice of the planet rose not in words, but in a deep, ancient pulse that shook the valley. The Huntress finally looked uncertain. What is this power? She demanded. Raylan's voice was quiet. It is the truth. It sees everything you have done, every life you took for sport, every kill you celebrated. Memory slammed into the Huntress like a spear. The circle projected faint shapes, ghost-like forms moving in the air. She saw battles she had fought long ago, scenes she remembered with pride, bodies she had taken as trophies, worlds she had scarred. Each memory made the flames rise higher. Her eyes widened. No, these were victories. These were my honors. The circle disagreed. A wave of energy struck her chest, sending her stumbling backward. Her armor flickered. Her confidence cracked. Ryland did not move. He watched like a witness, not a fighter. "This place doesn't judge strength," he said. "It judges intention. It judges the heart, and yours." The ground shook hard, is full of blood. The Huntress roared and swung her spear at the closest pillar. The weapon struck, but instead of breaking stone, the spear bent. A shockwave hurled her to her knees. Her hands shook from the force. She stared at Ryland with rage and fear. "Human!" she screamed. "You trapped me." Ryland finally stepped closer. Not with anger, with a tired sadness. "You trapped yourself. 15 years. You chased me because killing made you feel alive. But now the planet sees you for what you are." The glowing ring around her tightened like a noose made of light. The Huntress tried to stand, but the ancient power forced her back down, for the first time in her life. She was prey. Ryland stood just outside the glowing circle, watching the energy rise around her. The wind started again, swirling the dust into spirals. The pillars pulsed like ancient hearts. He spoke softly, words meant only for her. "Followed me across the stars. Follow me here too. To the end." The ground split open beneath her feet. The judgment had begun. The valley shook like the heart of the planet had awakened in anger. Dust rose in spirals, and the glowing pillars burned bright white, lighting the entire circle as if the sun itself had fallen to the ground. Ryland stood still, watching the Huntress struggle inside the ring of ancient fire. The ground beneath her feet cracked open, revealing a deep, dark glow like molten light mixed with shadows. It churned and twisted, alive and waiting. The Huntress roared, her armor cracking with each pulse of energy. She tried to rise, pushing against the light that pressed down on her shoulders, but the circle forced her lower. Her knees struck the ground. Her spear fell from her hand, hitting the earth with a weak clang. For the first time, the galaxy's greatest hunter had nothing left to stand on. "Human!" she shouted, voice shaking. "Stop this! Fight me! Face me with steel, not magic." Raylan's eyes softened, not with pity, but with a kind of quiet understanding. "I faced you for 15 years, he said. "Every day was a fight, every step. Every night I survived, you lost." The flames circled her tighter. "You chased me across worlds," Raylan continued, stepping forward slowly. "You killed 9 people I cared about. You marked me as your 10th. But you never understood." He looked up at the sky, letting the wind brush across his face. "I never ran from you because I feared death. I ran because I needed time. Time to find this place. Time to bring you here." The Huntress snarled, her voice cracking. "I hunted for honor." "You were prey, a weak human." Raylan shook his head. "A hunter who hunts for honor protects the innocent. But you hunted for pride, for joy, for blood. That's not honor, that's hunger." The ground beneath her ripped wider. Light shot upward, wrapping around her arms and chest like chains. Her voice became desperate. "I am Vrakari. Judgment is not for me." The pillars pulsed harder, then a deep sound rolled through the valley, a heartbeat, but not human. The planet itself breathed. A voice, ancient and shapeless, filled the circle. It did not speak words, it spoke truth. The kind that lived under the surface of things, in the hidden laws older than stars. The Huntress screamed as the light around her tightened. Her memories flashed rapidly in the air above her. Every kill, every smirk, every moment she felt powerful over the weak. The circle fed on the truth and delivered its verdict. Ryland took one step closer. He spoke softly, like talking to someone who finally needed to hear the truth instead of their own pride. You chased me for 15 years. I was the one prey you never caught. And here, at the end of all that distance, I learned something. Her breathing grew rough. Her armor split down the center. The circle roared. Rylan looked directly into her eyes. A hunter who kills for pride becomes the hunted by their own sins. The light exploded upward, swallowing the Huntress in a column of white fire. She let out one last cry, half rage, half fear, before her voice broke apart and vanished. Inside the light, and then silence. The flames withdrew slowly, falling like ash made of stars. When they cleared, the Huntress was gone. Only a 10th stone marker rested beside the other 9, glowing faintly before turning cold. Rylan stood alone in the circle. He knelt beside the 10th marker, touched it with 2 fingers, and closed his eyes. Not in joy, not in anger, but in finality. It's over, he whispered. The pillars dimmed. The winds of Creta softened. The valley went quiet again, as if the planet had fallen back to sleep. Rylan rose, shoulders heavy but spirit lighter than it had been in 15 long years. He looked at the sky, no longer a place he feared, and took a slow, deep breath. Run long enough, he said softly, and even a hunter becomes the hunted. With that final line, he turned and walked away from the stone circle. For the first time since the Huntress marked him, Rylan was free.